What can you buy with 18,000 US dollars? A second-hand car? Take the whole family on Disney cruise? Put it in a retirement account or invest it for the future? Turns out 18,000 is the amount it takes to get you a ticket to the United States. Today we'll learn more about the underground Chinese restaurant network that makes powering over 40,000 Chinese restaurants across the country possible. Hi, my name is Christy and this is the American Chinese Food Show. I want to start with a song in Fuzhounese. It's called 18,000 US dollars. That's how much to pay the smugglers to get you into the United States from Fujian province, China, back in the early 1990s. It got a lot more expensive until only recently. Here's some of the lyrics. My mother constantly prays. My father makes noodles to ensure safety, delivering me to the docks deep at night.
我买今年见，为了信仰背不低。我买的笔记，我跌落面波太远。我买今年见，上架马路也清澈。我买今年见，后来的我遇到几点事。
$18,000 is just the dollar amount. The trip that follows, needless to say, is harsh. The most well-known accident was when Golden Venture, a cargo ship that smuggled 286 undocumented immigrants from China in 1993. Their trip from Bangkok to Kenya, then New York, took 4 months. A contact person was supposed to send a small speedboat to bring people ashore in batches once the ship arrived in New York, but he was unexpectedly killed in a gang war. After waiting in international waters for 2 weeks, the snakeheads decided to take a risk and move closer to shore on a beach in Queens, allowing all the smugglers to swim to land on their own. 10 people drowned in early morning water. Survivors recalled, a single toilet was the ship's only concession to hygiene, and most people relieved themselves wherever they were. Without running water, passengers had no way to clean themselves. The days rolled into one another in clouds of cigarette smoke. The passengers slept on bare decks and cots, getting by on 1 meal a day of rice and vegetables. They ran out of vegetables toward the end. But people from Fuzhou didn't stop. Here are some outdated but official numbers. Fujian province intercepted 208 cases of coastal smuggling involving over 2,000 people in 2 years in the early 2000s, mostly from Changle and Fuqing in Fuzhou. The number is likely much higher. According to statistics from Xiamen University, from 1980 to 2005, over 200,000 people from Changle alone entered the United States, many of whom were illegal immigrants. The reasons to leave your home are always similar: to make money and to build a better life for yourself and the future generations. Fuzhounese immigrants claimed Fujian as a province did not get as much government resource for development decades ago, hence the living condition was worse. It's partly true. In 1978, Fujian's GDP per capita was ranked 23rd in the country, the lowest among the coastal provinces. But it jumped to 8th in the nation by early 1990s. The reason Fuzhounese kept leaving is likely because of the money sent back there. Remittances sent from overseas to Fujian amounted to at least $1 billion US dollars annually, equivalent to 1/5 of the province's fiscal revenue in 2001. In 1995 alone, Changle in Fuzhou received at least 300 million USD in remittances from the United States. To the locals, it just means there's a lot of money to make out there. So many Fuzhounese began taking pride in smuggling. Some villages would even set off firecrackers so everyone knows another person has reached the destination. Those who lacked the courage to go abroad were looked down upon. Where did the Fuzhounese make all that money in America? Well, the restaurant industry is one sector that consistently requires new workers. It's estimated there were 40,000 Chinese restaurants in the United States then. Let's assume each place needs two cooks, one for the wok and one for the fryer. That's still almost 100,000 Chinese cooks, plus cashiers, order takers, kitchen helpers, and dishwashers, and that's just for a takeout size restaurant. Even though restaurant jobs are fast-paced, physically demanding with long hours, and oftentimes very low pay, people from Changle in the 2 decades leading to the early 2000s were still able to raise their average annual income of $500 in China to $22,000 after emigrating abroad. Of course, not all the Chinese restaurant workers are undocumented. In this channel, we talked about restaurant families who have been in the country for generations with their ancestors coming from Canton. Some of these workers entered the US as refugees claiming asylum. Many arrived since the 1980s using family reunification clauses in the US immigration laws, including my mom and I. But a good amount also arrived through the human smuggling network. I see many similarities between immigrants from Fuzhou who arrived in the past 3 decades with the early Cantonese gold mine and railroad workers. They are young, probably not even 40 or even 30 years old, often not told the truth of what the new country is like, borrow money to go to the United States, then have to start working to pay off debt and send money back home. Back in the 1800s, Chinese workers got off the sometimes 2-month-long boat ride after a night or so in San Francisco Chinatown, would then be sent up to camp somewhere remote. Today's smuggling route is no safer than it was when Golden Venture got on headlines. Here's a typical journey. From Hong Kong to Turkey, then to Guatemala by plane, then a 10-hour boat ride into southeastern Mexico. Then travel by motorcycle, taxi, or on foot, trekking closer to the other side of the border. Many bus transfers. Later, the final trip is by boat crossing the Rio Grande. Fuzhounese, upon arriving in New York City, would rely on the network on East Broadway, New York, Chinatown, but more recently also clusters in Brooklyn 8th Avenue and Flushing, Queens. On East Broadway, you see employment agencies, immigration lawyers specializing in legalizing undocumented workers, and moneylenders. Inside the employment agency, jobs are posted with area codes because most workers don't know the names of the cities, types of work, and salary on post-its on plexiglass windows. With the recent rise of mobile phones and social media, some transactions have moved on to WeChat and local online forums. The further the job is from New York, usually the higher the wage. Monthly salary for a cook today is around $5,000. The industry standard is also for the restaurant owners to provide free food and lodging. If a match looks promising, a phone interview and negotiation would take place between the worker and the restaurant owner. Just to show you how established this underground network is, the Chinatown bus system, even I took it from Canal Street to Flushing many times when I was living there, originated in the early 1990s as a means to transport restaurant workers from New York City to various parts of the country. Once they get off the bus, they call their employer whom they'd never met before, and they get picked up and start working in the kitchen immediately. Not knowing anything about the new town or city they just arrived at, not knowing more than perhaps a few words in English. And most don't even leave the restaurant in the following months they work there, except for cigarette smoke breaks in the parking lot. Lauren Hilgers did a great feature for The New Yorker 10 years ago. The interviewed Chinese cook explained why. What if you get lost? You can't ask anybody directions, and your boss is going to be too busy at the restaurant to come get you. Restaurant work is so physically demanding. After the restaurant closes, most only have time to take a shower and do some mindless phone scrolling before going to bed, doing the exact same things again the next day.
周泡都是这句，餐瓦是炉头，回家是枕头，天天都是这样子的，就是有甜有苦了，反正这么久都过来了。
If you visit the rural villages in Fuzhou today, you would see many Western-style mansions in the middle of bungalows. Most of them were built by those who successfully smuggled abroad to work that restaurant life. The ironic part is, many of them had to leave behind wives, the elderly, and children to watch over their empty mansions. They keep telling themselves, just a few more years, then I can go home. After sitting on this episode for almost 2 years, I've come to accept that not just the Chinese restaurant, but the industry in general are powered by many exploited and oftentimes undocumented workers. And I decided a story, despite being uncomfortable, still needs to be told. That's it for today's episode. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel. See you soon.